All right, hello everybody. It's Greg, and I got a few questions that I want to address today, and the questions are relative to annual leave and sick leave, and some of the things to consider about both of them, and how do they work out in retirement. So when you're about to retire, how are they going to impact your retirement? And then also I want to talk about some strategies you might want to consider as you kind of plan that exit strategy. Maybe when you're earning that last year, 2 years before retirement, some of the things you can do to help plan it so that you can maximize your benefits. But most importantly, make decisions that are best for you and your family situation. All right, so that's what I want to talk about. Now, first up here is sick leave, okay? So when you are about to retire, okay, the way that your sick leave plays out is your sick leave, however many hours that you have in sick leave, your sick leave balance, what they'll do is they'll take those hours of sick leave and they will add it to your years of service. So the years of service that you'll calculate towards your pension, so on and so forth. So let me be clear, they will not pay it out. So it adds to your years of service, okay? Now, one of the points I want to make to you is this one right here. It cannot get you to the finish line. What does that mean? If I could give you another example, one of our physicians had an enormous amount of sick leave accumulated, almost 1 year worth. I think it was like about 10 months worth of sick leave accumulated. And he was wondering, hey, if I'm trying to meet this minimum benchmark of 20 years of service, can I retire early because my sick leave counts towards that? The answer is no. Okay, so it cannot get you to that finish line of that whatever a year of service benchmark you're trying to meet. So I hope that makes sense. Now, one of the things I tell people to consider is whether you should use your sick leave before you retire or go ahead and retire and have it count towards your years of service. One of the things that I will mention is if you calculate, if you have a large amount of sick leave, or even a small amount of sick leave, and if you want to see how if you retire and have it add to your years of service, how is that going to impact your monthly pension in that calculation versus you using that sick leave? And I'll talk about that in a second. So my response to that, if I'm looking at my career or if I'm helping me and my spouse work on retirement planning, one of the things I'll take in consideration is whether you have a lot or very little sick leave left. If you are going to go ahead and have it added to your years of service, that's the route you choose, the benefit it's going to have on your pension is minimal. It's actually, it's minuscule, right? And the reason why I bring that up is the alternative is using your leave. And one of the things that when we have retirement classes and we talk about folks that are planning retirement, some of the very common theme people speak about when they're right about to go into retirement, whether it's them, their spouse, or them and their spouse retire at the same time, or if they're single, is a lot of people have what I like to call is a celebratory trip, right? They plan to go on this round the world cruise or extravagant cruise, a European vacation. Maybe they're going to fly to Asia and for the first time, or maybe, tour the Holy Land. Or they're going to, they bought Harley Davidson motorcycles and they're going to ride all the way, they're going to ride all over the country in their RV. Well, most people do that. So one of the things that I would express, if that is something you're going to do, is, and you want to use your sick leave, right, is think about this, right? Use that sick leave to prepare for that celebratory trip. One of the common things when I talk to healthcare workers or just older workers in general, and I bet you a lot of you are in the same situation, a lot of us neglect the things that we know we're supposed to be doing to take care of ourselves. For example, like I have up here, I'll bet you most of us out there have some type of procedure we've been putting off for a long time, right? Well, then take that sick leave and get that procedure you need. For example, if you're going to go tour the Holy Land and you've been putting off LASIK surgery, right? Go get your surgery so you can see and you're not depending on your glasses as much, right? If you have a shoulder surgery that you've been putting off, right? You don't want to be in any pain and you want to be at your best on your trip. So go get that procedure, take that recovery time that you need so that you are nice and fresh when you go on that trip. Same thing, right? If you haven't got your annual eye exam, right? So if you haven't, go get your eye exam. Or, if you're due for some new glasses, go get some new glasses, right? So when you go on your trip, you're well prepared. Or another thing, maybe it's not you. You probably have some stuff. If you haven't got your 6-month dental cleaning, or you haven't got that filling that you've been needing, or maybe you've been putting off physical therapy for an injury or something like that. So if it's not you, what about your spouse? Right? I was working with one physician on an exit strategy, and one of the things he was using his sick leave for in retirement is his wife needed a procedure. Well, who's going to take care of his wife when she gets home? Right? She has a recovery period as well, so he needs to go prepare food for her. He needs to be driving her around town for those follow-up appointments. That's something you could use your sick leave for, to care for your spouse. So consider that, right? Now, one of the other things, let me dive down to this one here. If necessary, you have to be out for prolonged periods of time. Your supervisor might ask you to get some FMLA paperwork, just so that your doctor signs in and documents that, yes, hey, this person might be out for extended period of time for pre-op, post-op, or just a recovery of some type of procedure and whatnot. So you might need to do that. This is usually not too big of a deal. If you're a physician who's planning to retire, you've signed tons of FMLA paperwork. Now it's just time to do it for you, right? So that might be necessary, but in my experience with people crafting that exit strategy, it's really not a big deal, right? But if I could jump back to this line right here, one of the things that I think is very valuable if you are go ahead and preparing for that celebratory trip, or using even if you stagger your sick leave throughout the year to take those appointments, remember, if you retire and you just take that balance of sick leave, let's say something like 80 hours, right? And you apply it towards your pension, it's going to add very minimal impact to that pension, right? But if you're burning that leave, right, you're using it to take care of these things, if you're on sick leave, you're still getting your full pay, right? And on top of your full pay, you're on leave, you're still employed. You're also getting the 5% TSP match. So that's one of the reasons why I said, depending on your situation, you might want to use that leave to take care of all these healthcare issues, to prepare for that celebratory trip, or maybe your celebratory trip is maybe just to drive across country or go visit grandkids and whatnot. So again, take that leave. I would say take that leave and address those healthcare issues. All right. Now the next one is your annual leave. How does your annual leave affect or impact you when you're preparing for retirement? Okay. Now your annual leave, the hours that you've accumulated, will be paid out to you. If you walk out the door and you have a balance of annual leave, it's going to be paid out to you at your salary, but just be mindful, it's also being taxed at your income tax bracket, right? So it is taxed. Now, when you get paid out, right, that last paycheck for your annual leave, that money, those dollar amounts, they're going to be paid out in your last paycheck. It's paid for by the facility you work for. Unlike your pension, when you start collecting your pension, that's going to be paid through OPM. So this last check is actually pretty quick. It's your last paycheck. All right. Now, one of the things I want you to consider, this is a gray area right now, right? Most people, if you talk to people that you've known retired recently, from the day your retirement date to the day you actually get a full pension check, OPM has a backlog that is pretty significant. I would say at least anticipate not getting your pension check for the first 3 months, as long as 6 months. It just depends where they are, how many people are retiring, and how fast they can work. But the reason why that's important is your monthly bills. If you are depending on your pension check or your regular paycheck to pay your monthly bills, then taking that full payout might be nice because it can help keep you afloat until that pension check kicks in. But if you're in a situation where you don't need your biannual paycheck, your biweekly paycheck to pay your bills, maybe you don't need the full payout. Maybe you're better off spending the leave and getting that TSP match. Because yes, by the way, while you're on annual leave, you are getting full pay and the full TSP match. So it might be one of those situations. It just depends on your financial situation, right? So again, it is paid by your facility, so it's pretty quick. But do plan, depending on what's going on in the country, how many people are retiring. This changes all the time. You might be looking at between 3 to 6 months to wait from your retirement date to the date you get your full pension check. Okay. And I think I hit this point pretty well. Yes, while you're on leave, you are also getting your full pay and your 5% TSP. So, with that being said, on sick leave, I said maybe you use your sick leave to prepare for your celebratory trip. But when it comes to your annual leave and you have a big bounce, maybe you use that annual leave to take your celebratory trip. I'm working with a physician right now. He had the equivalent of about a month and a half of annual leave. So he coordinated with his supervisor for coverage and whatnot. And he took 3 weeks of annual leave. He'll be retired when he gets back. But he's on a celebratory trip right now. He's taking 3 weeks in the Philippines. He's having a vacation. He's taking care of some family business. But he's using his annual leave for that celebratory trip. When he gets back home, he'll come to work for 1 day and he retires the next day. So all the meantime, while he's on his celebratory trip, he's getting his full pay and TSP match, right? So that's real money. So think about that. Now, these last two are strategies, and I'm gonna slow down a little bit because there's strategies that you could use that can be very valuable depending on your situation, right? So going back to what I was saying, the large payout can help offset front loading your TSP. So I want you to think about this. Think about you contributing to the TSP, getting the 5% TSP match, but you are about to retire. Let me bring up the payroll calendar. So this is a strategy one of our former optometrists kind of brought to our attention. So this is 2023's pay calendar, okay? Most people usually plan for retirement, and usually, just generally speaking, the most popular day to retire is the last day of the calendar year, December 31st. But some of you don't care about that. Some of you want to retire as soon as possible. Some of you, maybe you look at your VA anniversary date as a date you want to retire. So let's say you're in that situation, right? Or let's say you're going to retire as soon as your spouse is eligible to retire. And that might be in the middle of the year. So for this example, let me use the example of a person wanting to retire maybe in June, right in the middle of the year, and maybe in the middle of June, the last pay period, right here, okay? So let's look at that. If you can't see the dates, don't worry about it. The most important thing, the concept is you're retiring in the middle of the year. Well, the IRS says that you, in 1 year, can contribute a maximum amount of dollars to your 401k, right? Let's say based on your age, this year, 2022, actually 2023, it's gonna be $30,000, right? So if you're over 50, because you plan to retire, and you're eligible to put $27,000 in your 401k per year. So think about that. When we're working routinely, we want to spread that money out throughout the entire 26 pay periods. Why? So we can get the match all along the way and we don't miss out on that. But in your last year, if you're retiring somewhere in the middle, right, you can still contribute the full $27,000, even if you're retiring in the middle of the year. So this is a strategy called front loading your TSP. So if you're planning on retiring at the end of pay period 12, maybe get that $27,000 and divide it amongst 12 pay periods. It's a lot of money. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of money, but you're able to dump as much money in only 12 pay periods as everyone's dumping in an entire year, right? So you're and why are you doing that? For the tax advantages. Now, this is a thing. If you walk out the door on the 12th, that is the last day you can contribute to the TSP. Plus, it's also the last day the federal government's going to match it, which, hey, that's okay because that's what you decided to do. But if you could dump as much of your money in, right, the whole 27K, you might want to do that. So the way this ties back to your annual leave is this. If you're going to now put $27,000 and separate it between only 12 pay periods, that's going to be a lot of money bi-weekly dumping into the TSP. It's less money in your pocket to pay your bills, right? Or to support your kids, or maybe dump into other investments, right? So the reason why I'm saying that, more money going to the TSP, less money in your pocket, right? That might be a reason why we go ahead and cash out our annual leave, use that extra money to hold us over right? We're front loading the TSP, right? Less money out of your pocket because you're trying to you're accelerating your contributions in the TSP before you retire, because you're retiring in the middle of the year. Okay, well, that's less money in your pocket. So I take this big chunk of annual leave money and use it to sustain me and my family, right? So that's a strategy you might want to think about, right? So let me go back to the pay calendar, because the last one I want to talk about is consider timing your payout for the next year for taxes. So if I want to go ahead and take the full payout, right? I want to take the money. And you are a person who wants to retire at the end of the calendar year. Let me pull the calendar up. Take a look at this, right? So let's say you plan on retiring at the end of December, okay? The end of December, right? You might wanna be careful. If you're gonna take the full payout and it's a lot of money, let's say it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. One of the things you might want to consider in your timing is not just the day you retire, but talk to payroll just to make sure you coordinate this correctly. Find out what date are you going to get that final paycheck. This is the reason why. Let's say your final payout for your annual leave is $50,000, right? Significant amount of money. It's $50,000. If you collect it during this calendar year, the year you're retiring, well, the IRS is going to tax that money based on your income tax bracket this year, which if you're working full time and you're a high earning employee, it's going to be in a high tax bracket. But if you plan to retire and then next year you don't plan to work at all, right? You're truly going to be retired. You're going to start collecting pensions, Social Security, which you are still going to be getting income, but it's nowhere near what you're making now. Your tax bracket is going to fall. So if you collect that $50,000 just at the beginning of the next year, that $50,000 is going to be now taxed at a lower tax rate, because that year, that in this case 2024, you're going to be making less money. You're going to be in lower income tax bracket, right? Hopefully, there's other considerations like, hey, maybe your spouse is still a very high earner and all that. So you have to talk to your CPA about that. But that's one of the considerations. Matter of fact, that same physician that's in the Philippines right now, taking a celebratory trip, that's one of the things that we found that worked out for him. We're going to go ahead and he's going to work, he's going to retire in the first pay period of the next year, in this case, 2023. He's going to work one pay period. Why? So when he cashes out the remainder of his leave, he's not going to be able to spend it all. When he cashes it out, it's going to be a lower tax bracket because he's in a high tax bracket right now. So it's just one of those things to consider, right? And again, if you're a year or two out from retirement, again, talk to payroll so you get this timing right. Talk to your CPA so you plan this thing out right. But it's one of those things that you have some good options, right? And I think if you just sit down and you look at the calendar, you look at your dates, and you look at what you want to do, you can plan a very effective exit strategy is what I call it, right? So you can take those things into consideration. I've seen many employees in our retirement classes do different things, different times. I've seen spouses who both work for the VA retire on the same day. That front-loading TSP strategy I learned from one of the physicians in the class. So keep in mind, and then same thing with taking the celebratory vacation now, come back and work be in clinic one day, then retire. I mean, you can certainly do that. There are things you have to put in place. One of the things I also want to mention is going back to leave, and I'll close with this, is a lot of you who are looking to take a significant amount of leave, one of the biggest concerns is if I'm out for a significant amount of time, is the strain it's going to leave on my team, whether it be sick leave or annual leave. If I'm out for a month, who's seeing my patients? Who's taking care of my customers? I encourage you to do one thing very well, and that is work with your manager. Talk to your supervisor. Let them know what you're trying to accomplish, and try to coordinate that so you have adequate coverage. You're leaving for good. This is your last hurrah. So if you can work with them, plan it accordingly, I think it could work for you, and it could work for the team you leave back at the clinic. And depending on where you work, at our VA, it's different from your VA. One of the things that I have seen is if you clearly file your retirement paperwork and you have a solid date, most managers can go to their resource committee or go to their executive leadership and say, hey, if this person has already filed their paperwork for this date, you know, it's a lock, they're leaving. A lot of times they can get approval to what is called over encumber, meaning over hire for your spot because it's already confirmed that you're walking out the door. So if they're able to hire your replacement while you're still on staff, but you've already technically confirmed a retirement date, you submitted the paperwork, a lot of times it can help relieve that burden. And you can, you know, you have some time to train your replacement. So talk to them about that, right? We want to make sure that we can try our best to make sure it's a win-win for you, your team, you, your family members, and all that. So keep that in mind. But yeah, guys, that's some of the ways that your annual leave and your sick leave can impact you, your family, and help create your strategy. And this is something I would start to craft maybe even when you're a year out, 2 years out, if you have a lot of leave to use. But with that said, guys, if you have any questions or if you have any comments or maybe even a different perspective than me, you know how to reach me. I'm at gregory.mesa2@va.gov. I'm on also Microsoft Teams. But with that said, guys, have a great day.